Hello everyone and welcome to English Academia. As promised earlier, here I am with the first presentation for this platform.
Ernest Hemingway, the other name of epitomizing of some of the extraordinary character traits.
From the careful reading of Hemingway novels as well as his short stories, one thing is quite insightfully clear to us
That all the protagonists belonging to Hemingway's novels and short stories are supremely embedded with the seeds of existentialism.
and of course there are some kinds of superhumanly and exclusive traits of personality which are conspicuously belonging to those characters only. Be it Robert Jordan's solidarity in the Spanish Civil War in For Whom the Bell Tolls, or be it Santiago's tough resilience and tenacity in The Old Man and the Sea. Existentialism, however, is the right lens to envision the insight, the dynamics of those characters. And today we are going to deal with one such text which made the name of Hemingway quite immortal in the milieu of American literature, and that is, of course, The Old Man and the Sea. But this journey is not going to be a common one. As we all know, there are a number of deliberations on The Old Man and the Sea, and the major issues like the implication of the biblical allusions, the usage of the Christian symbols, and a number of different sides related to the novella have already been deliberated in the discourses of significant and veteran literary scholars. Today we are going to take up one particular and singular issue which is quite prevalent in this novella, in this text. Definitely this issue did find out its reference and mention in the other deliberations as well, but not in that sense of depth which we are going to take up today. We will be dealing with the appearance of the lions in Santiago's commemorations and dreams. As we all know, the lions are the most ambassadorial of all the big cats. Besides its enthusiasts from several spectrums, from the milieu of wildlife and several other issues, they have been one of the prime choices in the mind of the literary renderers as well. And we all know perhaps Hemingway was highly fascinated by the appearance of the lions from his visit to East Africa back in the earlier part of 1930s. We will be dealing how the lions are eventually finding their place in Santiago's dreams and commemorations. As we all know, in the 14th century, the aura of humanism created an entirely different perspective in the heart and mind of the people. The typical theocentric worldview was being ascided and the homocentric worldview took its place.
Now, posthumanism is something that clearly denies all the dogmatisms of humanism.
If humanism asserts the homocentric enigma at a prime and central position, then posthumanism defines human beings quite at a peripheral level. We will be looking at the positions of the lions in Santiago's dreams, particularly the locale of the dreams in the course of the narrative, and gradually examining how well they render the message or they convey the importance in the mind of the readers. Eventually we would be envisioning Santiago in that primitively rendered aura of posthumanism, and at the same time, by doing so, we would be looking at those spirit lions who appear in his dreams and render themselves as one of the chief motivational factors in his subsequent actions, as we would find out during the course of the entire narrative. So, let us be the escorts of Santiago
And find out what kind of role exactly those lions perform.
to make the text a sensible one, to make the text enigmatically an immortal one.
Man is not much beside the great birds and beasts. Still, I would rather be that beast down there in the darkness of the sea. This was the utterance of Santiago himself. Did the utterance come in the mind of the old fisherman only as a mere gesture of thought, lost amidst the depth of his rapacious adventure? Or can it be really interpreted in the lights of animality studies, a budding interdisciplinary branch of posthumanistic inquiries. Much has been told and repeatedly discussed regarding the psyche of Ernest Hemingway's protagonists. It is also quite insightfully proven that the protagonists bear quite a close resemblance with the essence of their author's own life. Gilbert E. Wilder, in his article The Old Man and the Sea as a Fable, says as the protagonist of the book brings to full circle Hemingway's use of the mythic hero. For Santiago is again a hero with a different face. He is a modern adaptation of what Joseph Campbell has called saint or ascetic, the world renouncer, a life fully well designated under the threats of a number of hardships. To borrow Campbell's words once again, just in order to re emphasize the notion, the ego is burnt out. Like a dead leaf in a breeze, the body continues to move about the earth, but the soul has dissolved already in the ocean bliss. These are but the attributions cumulatively termed as code hero, a man who prefers to lead a life of grace under several circumstances of pressure. But apart from this sense of wholeness and commonality with each other, each of the individuals connotes their exclusively own multitudinous layers of personality. It is worth noting that the iceberg theory is as prevalent in Hemingway's manly protagonist psyche as it is in his celebrated narrative technique. As for example, all the sensible readers can well assume what on earth is immediately going to take place during the course of piercing the marlin and its aftermath in The Old Man and the Sea, through the presentations of crafty utterances and punctuations, and through the foreshadowing technique of narration. But where lies the elemental significance of the lions, flashed in the course of Santiago's dreams and commemoration time and again? Is it only a denotative implication of his indomitable vigor in his old age, the visual reminder of his lost youth? Or Hemingway deliberately chose the lions in the dreams as a perfect vehicle in commemoration with the macho-like state of psychic affair of his hero? Well, finding out the author's actual intention is not my prime area of concern, although a number of other references would be there which would eventually relate the particular essence with its author's own life, experience, and influence. Through this discourse, my aim is to figure out a duality, an excellent interplay of animality within humanity, as well as to trace out where the anthropogenic pride actually submitted itself to the primitive beings. And while perceiving the layers of his dream through a deconstructive study, one should be on high alert regarding the location of the dreams in the narrative web of our current novella. Now let us be directly involved. The first utterance of the lions we find during the preliminary course of the first day as the old man was having a conversation with Manolin, his sole companion, who considered him to be strange old man and is apt to a large extent. The strangeness is not only evident in his resilience but also embedded in his unconscious layer of psyche, which ventures out deep into the sea, contradicting his decay's physique and eludes all sorts of the reference of the animals, respectively. Here I would like to invoke an interesting assertion by Carrie Wolf at the very initial part of my argument, to display a sort of omnipresence of the animals in animal literature in general and in Hemingway in particular. However, when we first encounter the aspects of the lions, it's quite apparent an approach. There may not be found some deep traces of spatial regards, a simple commemoration of the past events, so to say, the occurrences that he witnessed in his heydays as a fisherman, traveling to the different points of the compass. Lions abruptly find their first interplay amidst the conversation of the old man and the boy, which was eventually a conversation on baseball, something that Santiago loved and also greatly admired by Hemingway himself. Santiago says, "When I was of your age, I was before a mast on a square-rigged ship that ran to Africa, and I have seen lions on the beaches in the evening." Incidentally, the conversation on Africa ran not for so long, and they once again immersed themselves in the baseball. Here we are to witness a sudden shift in their conversation. The shift from Africa to the baseball, and there will be a number of shifts from dream to reality, from the lions of the dream to Santiago of the reality, the hunter. Our protagonist and the great felines are so innately aligned. Thus, another shifting gesture, however, is underpinned, and that is the shifting of two selves, the anthropogenic one and the animalistic one. These apparent occurrences of the lions from nowhere into the course of the conversation or into the dream can roughly be suggestive of one phenomenon. Somewhere deep in his heart, Santiago is a devotee of an ardently rapacious nature. The predatory instinct towards his achievement firmly backs him up to be considered as a beholder of posthumanistic stance. As we know, posthumanism, which is otherwise widely called anti-humanism, denotes a philosophical position concerned with reconceptualizing what it means to be human. Posthumanism refutes all ideas of naturalness and denies the existence of a transcendent human nature asserted by humanism. Their manner of conversation seems to be a direct swing from one object to another. Lions are neither confined here only as a sacred symbol of power, royalty, and faith, or a point of conviction as pointed out by Joseph M. Flora. He goes on to say Hemingway presents Santiago and the boy together as an embodiment of faith. Both the boy's and Santiago's dreams of lions in Africa symbolize this faith. So, there are something really connotative textures that profoundly require a digging. Relating to the ratio of asserted statements and hints, we may say that the lion dreams can be reinterpreted since they incorporate the notion of a primitive inculcation of surrendering the homocentric ethos to the primitive spirits. Since the beginning of the evolution, the earth has witnessed a host of constant natural spectacles. In the cradling stage of human civilization, human beings shared their space with enormous beasts. Fear came alongside their dwelling with the predators, and that fear considerably turned out to be transmuted into reverence and honor. And very soon, different species became associated with the ritualistic performances of our ancestors. Thus, gradually evolved the tendency of speculating the great beasts as the incarnation of the spirits, and even further, the incarnation of the gods. Nowadays, a galaxy of incarnated animals are really to be found as the inseparable parts of a number of ancient cultural jests. It is this inclination towards the performances that gradually inspired literature to allude animals from different perspectives and include them in the configurative essence of its plots. The fragmented yet vividly visionary interplay of the lions in the text prompts us to consider Santiago as standing somewhere in a non-anthropogenic stance. Three different parameters are substantial for our assessment of his interplay. First of all, there is presentation of the animal beings and the protagonist's affinity with those. Secondly, we may consider author's own affinity with the animals. And last but not least, the impact of this whole circulation on readers. Currently we are on the first point, and we will be dwelling upon on the rest too for sure throughout the entire course of the discussion. In his article Becoming with Animals, Symposies and the Ecology Meaning in London and Hemingway, Ryan Hediger mentions that Hemingway's own visit to Africa in the early 30s motivated and regulated him significantly to develop his affinity with animals. And no doubt, their manipulation in literature thus turned out to be more matured. The Old Man and the Sea appeared in 1952, so it's natural to expect a neatly saturated presentation of the issue that we are talking about. Hediger articulates that Hemingway reverses the conventional anthropocentric perspectives, literally making the man in the scene and the part of an object, a mere scent on the wind. To do this, Hemingway has relied upon subjectivity of the lion to make his own text. He takes out two works of Hemingway to illustrate his deliberation. The Short and Happy Life of Francis Macomber, a catchy short story written by Hemingway after his first visit to Africa, and his 1935 work of non-fiction Green Hills of Africa, a work about his first safari. Here, my broader dealing is chiefly concerned with the appearance of the lions in the dream of Santiago, but that doesn't simply mean that the submission of Santiago's anthropogenic self is only confined within the larger and loftier degree of the lions. At one point, Santiago readily admits the birds have a harder life than we do, except for the robber birds and the heavy strong ones. He acknowledges that most peoples are heartless about turtles because a turtle's heart will beat for hours after he has been cut off and butchered. Even to Marlin, his prey, calling him brother, he says, "Come on and kill me. I do not care who kills who." All are but the instances of animal supremacy over the granted notion of humanity. However, the couple of works that Heidegger takes out can also well suffice my arguments quite significantly. Like Jim Corbett, Hemingway also hunted out animals for a number of times and paradoxically nurtured gradual sympathy for them. Heidegger invokes Hemingway's passage from Green Hills of Africa, where Hemingway allied his suffering from a severely broken arms with that of a wounded bull elk. Now, this human animal alliance is the point where I would really like to specially highlight, and will be manipulating its reverberance for a number of times while interpreting the dreams. Contrary to the theocentric notion of belief, which depicts the surrender of human willpower to the god, the posthumanistic conviction asserts the supremacy of non human entities, and animals certainly are one of them. In other words, as represented by Keiichi Hirata, the primitive scenes as contrasted to man-made societies in Hemingway's works seems to play a role of giver of strength and purity. The deep and innate reference of the animals are finding their manifestation as the steady conqueror of the modern-day protagonist's soul. The second occurrence of the lions finds its manifestation in an elaborate wistful dream, and unlike the commemoration as found earlier, this is going to be embedded with much deeper ethos. Isn't this really interesting? Why didn't Hemingway omit the section "He loved them as he loved the boy"? He never dreamed about the boy. What was the necessity of drawing a scale of comparison after all? Well, perhaps by not doing so, he would have deprived us from acquiring some of the golden chances of interpretations. We already came to be acquainted about Manolin's dependence on Santiago, and the following slide just represents that early dependence. Such was the level of dependence that Linda W. Wagner was prompted to assert, and I quote, "Even though Santiago is clubbing the fish, his action seems as natural to the boy as chopping a tree down, and heavy blood smell he recalls as sweet. That a 5-year-old child had such a reaction to what must have been a gory and frightening scene shows clearly the trust he had in Santiago." Now, one thing is quite interesting to note here. The anthropocentric affection is denied and surrendered itself to the love towards the magnanimous felines in the dreams. Though at times we have heard Santiago saying, but all his loud soliloquies are too much apparent, the designator of his weakness compared to the innate urge to be lost in his dreams. All are, in fact, the bearer of humanly commonalities and nothing else. Not much of the hints come next after the dream and the old man woke up for the business. Just a preparatory course is taking place before hunting down the regal fish. Immediately after the dream discourse, there takes place the significant progression of the events which are to be witnessed after every section of dream henceforth. Hemingway, however, is craftily placing them in the discourse of the narrative, just as the discussion on DiMaggio took place in the conversation between Santiago and Manolin at the very first interplay of the commemoration. The condensed form of Santiago the fisherman, or if we say Santiago the hunter, is finding its manifestation in the form of active lions of the dreams, engaged in their play fighting, gamboling, and, as we came to know, after the completion of the dream, the man wakes up and comes into the action. This, in fact, is a fine psychoanalytical braiding of the conscious and the unconscious. This implication of braiding is even clearer in the immediate subsequent discourse. Definitely, why are the lions the main thing that is left is the prime interrogation. To find out a resolution, here we may apparently apply the process of condensation in the formation of the appearance of the lions in his dream, where Santiago's hunting self, ambition, and all the other excitements find their expression in the lions. His extreme will to make a big catch, which eventually turned out to be the greatest catch in his life, finds its manifestation in his unconscious through the projection of the lions. As if his own aged and weary willpower is not substantiating him enough to render his best effort. All the effort that he renders is ultimately left without any trace of mighty referential point. The urge to prove his exceptionality is even more dominant in times than the urge to simply embark an adventure. His own words are evidently powerful enough. So, proving is more importantly coming out into the forefront than the natural intake capacity of the events. His intensity to prove his exceptionality bring his humanly pride or advancement down at the feet of circumferential agents. One point of submission is even clearer, and now we understand why he strongly wished he would sleep and I could sleep and dream about the lions. He is tempted to invoke the dream lions, much akin to the invocation of Macbeth of the witches in Shakespeare's Macbeth. Thus, the lions would come in his dream and exhilarate him to accomplish his predatory mission. Quite clearly, we may posit our agreement to Joseph M. Flora's observation that we earlier came across. Both the boys and Santiago's dream of the lions in Africa symbolize this faith. As faith moves into the realm of action, hope becomes an important element. Simultaneously, another question may arise. Which faith are we talking about? Which one is far more digging into the actions? Which one is digging out the hope? We find an interesting juncture in the fourth occurrence of the dream lions. During the course of the trials and tribulations with the marlin, Santiago's left hand was cramped and apparently it was quite challenging to be on the daunting flow of the predatory consistency that he has been maintaining so far. On the third day of his voyage, the vast troop of porpoises came into his dream. Then he dreamed something interesting. He dreamed of his village, and after that, the lions come one by one, proudly. And then comes another shift as discussed earlier. He woke with a jerk, providing us not with even an ample scope to witness and enjoy the serene feline beauty on the evening beach. The old man had fought a titanic battle with the marlin. Earlier in this discourse, I mentioned a point that the readers should be on high alert regarding the textual locale of the dreams. And if the dream comes, can the nights be far behind? When we trace back that very reference, we obviously take a note of the 3 nights spent amidst the sea. All Hemingway heroes are quite afraid of night, and we have noticed how Robert Jordan, in For Whom the Bell Tolls, spent all his nights in an awakened state, either involved in conversation or engaged in passionate love-making with Maria. But night here in The Old Man and the Sea appears to be far more symbolic and suggestive of existential outlook, presenting the beasts in the dream of the old man. The frail and weary old man simply can't afford to be awakened and keeping an eye on the involuntary movement of the harpooned fish. Lions do appear in his dreams to provide with an essential companionship. A complementary role to the activities of the sleepless nights in For Whom the Bell Tolls is thus played brilliantly by the lions over here. We must not overlook two of the most powerful statements suggested by the author. Literally, no man is here to share the company. Not even a single human child to share and provide with the much needed warmth to the weary hands and heart. Only the lions. Not for just once or twice. Each and every time, every now and then, to shape up a powerful presence, to shape up a better recognition. Quite clearly, the ambitious human self entirely surrenders itself to the felines of the dreams. But do the repeated surrender of Santiago to the lions find any pragmatic resemblance with the day-to-day practical world? Certainly they do, and quite realistically. The correlation of nature and culture plays a crucial role in a subcontinent like India, where ecosystems range from the Himalayas and Gangetic plains in the north to the Indian Ocean in the south, from the Great Indian Desert or Thar in the west to the Sundarbans in the east. Nature and culture are so integrally woven in India that some of its vast literary masterpieces just can't be isolated from the combined bondage of nature-culture compound. One such text is The Hungry Tide by Amitav Ghosh. Ghosh here shows the web of life that is fabricated amidst the mangrove, a web of interrelation of human, nature and animals. Throughout the novel, tigers symbolize the immense power that the natural world holds in the Sundarbans, where even saying the word tiger or bag in Bengali is a taboo. Although there are a number of other dangers and disasters in the Sundarbans, such as the marsh crocodiles and severe cyclones, the focus on the tigers are so strong that they are qualified as one of the strong metaphors and one of the potential symbols in the Hungry Tide. Obviously, an evil connotation of the tigers is to be witnessed here in these mangroves. Hindus and Muslims, both the religions bow down their heads in front of the brutish strength of the man-eating cruelty of the tigers. And prior to collecting honey, firewoods, crabs and fishes, residents are obliged to convey offerings to Ban Bibi as well as to Dakshin Rai, the demonic tiger god who protects several parts of the forest. Offerings are conveyed with the crucial expectation for saving the lives of the people. How wonderful it is to connect the practical transformation of the literal renderings. Although Santiago's was not the venture at the cost of his life, neither he really conveyed an offering to the king of the beasts as they appeared in his dream, nor was the question of saving life was there. But sure enough, there was the question of preserving his dignity, which he admittedly glorified by conquering the Marlin after 3 long and painful nights and days. But what is left at the end of the day, when the Galanos and all the Dentuso scavenged the entire royal body? Nothing. He said aloud, "I went out too far." Peace prevails, and all the humanly pride diminishes itself when the old man was still sleeping on his face, and the boy was sitting by him and watching him. The old man was dreaming about the lions. Thus, the surrender turns out to be an absolutely worthy one.
Sure enough, all the anthropocentric enigma, pride and humanly egotism are gradually merging themselves only to be submitted in front of the supreme force of the nature. As we all know, nature herself is the prime entity who sets forth her own laws, rules and regulations and offers us with some of the best support systems. She is never to be fully understood. How can a frail man like Santiago can afford to go deep inside her mysterious realm? Lions in The Old Man and the Sea are definitely rendered as one of those best support systems which man can rely on. In this context, we may particularly refer to a passage by Clinton Burhans from his paper called The Old Man and the Sea, Hemingway's Tragic Vision of Man, and just have a look at it. At the twilight of today's journey, let us invoke the beautiful words of George B. Schaller, as rendered in one of his supreme works called Serengeti, A Kingdom of Predators. Here Schaller, the renowned biologist, goes on to say, "Our own dual past still haunts us. We hear a lion roar and the primate in us shivers, as if our own existence is still dependent on them." Indeed, much of our own existence and a number of other interpretative discourses are very much dependent on the existence of these immensely powerful and beautiful felines. So now this is the time we may call it a day, but before doing so, I would like to draw your attention to one of the phenomenally beautiful passage as we can find it in a book called A Glimpse of Eden. This is a great work by Evelyn Perkins Ames on African safari. Enjoy the quintessential beauty, power and charisma of these big cats as penned down by Ames in her rendition, and till then, stay safe, definitely keep enhancing yourselves, and we would be meeting soon on a trail of a different journey. Thank you.